Everybody's gotten their plate except for Frances. She's getting hers now. And we're very pleased tonight to have Christian Wiedemann come and talk about. And he didn't have a name for his program, so I gave him one. It's called Growing Up a Wiedemann. And I don't know if that's the right term, but that's what you got stuck with.
Well, he did.
He certainly is that. So, Christian, we're very happy to have you. Welcome. Have a great program.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know which light switch we should turn down. All right. Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it. Yeah, very excited to be here. I have to admit, it's a little intimidating to be in a room full of so many historians talking about history in the San Ramon Valley. So it's a fun opportunity, but absolutely feel free to interrupt, correct me, ask questions, whatever you guys want. Very informal. So I'm going to try to find a place to stand where I'm not blocking you here. Thank you, Lee.
Sure.
So, yeah, as Jerry said, the advertised title of the presentation was Growing Up a Wiedemann. To me, that kind of meant my childhood, and to me, that also kind of wasn't super interesting. I kind of was a suburban kid. I grew up on a ranch, but, besides that, I was a pretty normal upbringing. And so I tried to think of a way to tie it into earlier generations of the family. And so what I came up with, and what we'll look at tonight, we're going to look at each generation that grew up in the valley at a time period that's around when either my great-grandfather or my grandfather or my dad or myself would have been around 8 years old. So 1888, my great-grandfather Fred would have been 8. There's Howard on the top right in 1925, 8 years old. My dad on the bottom left, 1954. And then my brother and I in 1989. So we'll look at those time frames. We'll look at who was around, what was going on the ranch at that time, what the business looked like, and what the valley looked like, and all that kind of stuff. So I should mention, too, in case anyone's wondering, all the black and white photos I colorized. I found a website called MyHeritage, kind of a cool website. You upload a black and white photo, and it pops out a color photo in like 30 seconds, and it does a pretty good job. So some of these photos from the 1800s are colorized. That's why, in case you're wondering. So, yeah, gosh, I think that's pretty much it. Let's see if this clicker works. There we go. Okay, so we're just real briefly, a little background on where the Wiedemann family came from. 1844. My great-grandfather was 8 years old. And he was living in Eckernförde, which is in northern Germany, near the border of Denmark. It was a coastal city. This border kind of went back and forth a lot during this period of time. There was a lot of conflict around whether it was Denmark or Germany. So we have old census records that reflect, Danish information and German information, sort of went back and forth. Might have been one of the reasons that Christian came to the U.S. is to get away from the conflict. This is a picture of Eckernförde in the 1800s. Just for reference, obviously it was a port town. One of the main industries was smoking fish, particularly herring. So apparently the smell was obnoxious. May have also been part of the reason Christian left. We don't know, but it would have been a pretty smoky, smelly place to live. Based on the Danish census page from 1840, we know that the Wiedemann house was located roughly where that arrow is pointing, kind of behind the big building. And so they were pretty much downtown, and that's sort of interesting because, Christian grew up essentially kind of a city kid. I think of him as kind of a rancher or pioneer type, but he grew up in a pretty comfortable, relatively urban environment in the early to mid 1800s. And so he would have left for the United States from Hamburg, which is just south of Eckernförde. He would have sailed to New York in around 1852. Changed ships, sailed around the Horn of South America to San Francisco, which would have been, of course, a very treacherous journey. And he jumped ship in 1853 in San Francisco. And that's kind of the short version of how he ended up in the Bay Area, and in the East Bay in particular. So jumping forward to 1888, this is the Wiedemann family. We've got Fred on the far left. Fred's my great-grandfather. He's 8 years old in this photo. And his brother Henry and sisters Mary and Rose on the right side and Christian in the middle. He's been in California for about 35 years at this point. He's been on the ranch for about 20. And it would have been a really challenging place to live Notably absent is his wife, Katerina, also went by Maria. She had been dead for about 6 years when this photo was taken. And she and Christian had 7 children together. 3 of them passed away before 2 years of age. So needless to say, would have been a very tough place to grow up. Christian basically raised the kids on his own. I've seen some notes that there might have been a German woman who came and offered some support to the kids during their upbringing, but needless to say, would have been tough. I think maybe I mentioned it, but this photo was taken on the porch of the Wiedemann house, which is still standing in San Ramon. This is a map of the valley from 1885. The ranch that Christian established is outlined in red on the bottom left. And just kind of gives you an idea of what was going on in the valley at this time, which is basically not much. We have downtown San Ramon labeled as Limerick on this map, so it's still going by the Irish designation. And no railroad at this point, and not a lot of inhabitants. It would have been pretty quiet. So for context, this is San Ramon Valley Boulevard. This would be Norris Canyon Road, and this is Crow Canyon Road over here. So the ranch, just kind of a list of enterprises on the top right here, some of the stuff that was going on. Of course, cattle. Christian was also training and selling horses and colts. He was farming different grains and hay, churning a lot of butter and producing a lot of eggs and doing a variety of other things, firewood. I kind of think of it as more of a homestead than a cattle ranch at this time. Just kind of interesting to compare a map from 1894. This is 8 or 9 years after that previous map. And we can see a lot of development activity in the San Ramon Valley already. The railroad has come in at this time, so here's the San Ramon station. And, so we can see people are already moving into the area. So this probably would have been a period of some growth in the San Ramon Valley. So this photo, 1888, taken on the same day as the family portrait on the front porch. We've got the family in the yard. We've got cords of firewood stacked on the left side there. And some horses, and gives you an idea of what the family was doing at the time. A pet dog. I wish I knew the name of the dog, but I don't. So kind of a fun to have a high resolution old photo like this of the ranch. And this is a bit more zoomed out, same day again. You can see kind of the whole setup. There was a carriage barn down here. We can see a hay pile on the left side of the image. And some crops kind of up behind the house here. So just kind of a variety of activities going on. One of the things that I find really interesting about this photo is due to the clarity, we can see some fence lines that run up into the hills. And this is actually a fence that cuts across the side of that ridge as well. Those fences are the same as these 3 or 4 plank redwood fences with posts probably 10 feet on center that ran all the way up into the hills. And actually you can see remnants of them today. It's just kind of mind-blowing to think about the amount of work it would have taken to go post by post for miles around the entire property with obviously rugged forested terrain. Just would have been a tremendous amount of work. So interesting to think about. Obviously they didn't have tractors back then. So these are just some images of downtown San Ramon, features that would have been there at the time. These aren't really Wiedemann family photos, but just for reference, the schoolhouse would have been there, blacksmith shop, the general store. No San Ramon Hall at this time. Some interesting kind of fun recollections from a letter that it was either Fred or Henry wrote. I don't recall which one specifically. But they would hang out at the post office and wait for the stage to come in from Martinez to deliver the mail and other passengers or guests that were coming into the area. So Fred would hang out down there, look for dust on the horizon, and watch the stage come in. So that kind of passed as, what kids did for fun, I guess, in San Ramon at that time. And there were other things for the kids to do too. They used to race horses down the streets. Kids would ride horses to school. Fred also wrote about the fact that it was very easy to go out in a freshly plowed field and find tons of Indian artifacts, Native American relics. And that just, if I was a kid back then, that probably would have been just about all I was doing. So we've got a class. This is the San Ramon School, 1888. We think this is Fred here. It doesn't look a lot like him to me, except that the kid has a big ear, and Fred had really big ears. So I think it might be Fred, just kind of from a different angle. But But it gives you a flavor of kind of the kids at this time. I mean, we've got the little boy in the front barefoot, and this was a farm community, and the kids look dressed up, but they're probably going home to work after school, or at least a lot of them are. Another photo from 1891, just a little bit older class. I think this would have been after the railroad came in, so population would have been bigger. And we've got Fred again here on the right side. And I wish I had names for these students, but unfortunately I don't. And the San Ramon Schoolhouse, of course, downtown San Ramon, with the class in front of it around that time. So these are pages from a ledger that Christian kept in the 1800s of business dealings. So not exactly a journal. Mark Harrigan is posting some of the journals from the Wiedemann family in the 1920s through the 40s and 50s. This is just more of an accounting of transactions that were happening at the time, but it is interesting to see, what kind of business he was dealing in. So, for example, on the left side, we have sales of a gray mare, a gray horse, 3 cows, a calf, a colt. In the middle, this is an accounting, I would guess, of harvests of different types of oats. And on the bottom, you can see a list of barley, wheat, and oats. So he's probably just weighing out what the harvest is. And on the right side, we've got butter and eggs. The dates of these entries are circled, so 1887, 1888, kind of in that time period. There's a tax assessor record from this period of time that showed 400 pounds of butter churned in the year, and that's what they were taxed on. So clearly they were producing a lot of butter. Christian's first job off the boat when he arrived in San Francisco was at a dairy, so clearly he brought some of that expertise with him. So for Christian, there probably wasn't a lot of social activity in the San Ramon Valley. Hayward was kind of a bigger city that probably attracted his attention. He had kind of a history there. Apparently he met his wife in Hayward, and probably just would have been more of the city kind of niceties that he was accustomed to as a kid growing up in a more developed environment. Plus it was relatively convenient to get there from his location on the ranch. So this organization probably is where he spent at least a lot of his time. And this is the Oddfellows, the International Order of Oddfellows, Sycamore Lodge in Hayward. This photo is taken in 1887. And we have Christian right here in the front row, and that's Fred standing in front of him. And so we know that Christian spent a lot of time here, partly because in his obituary, there's a lengthy discussion around his time with the Oddfellows. His funeral was held at the Oddfellows Hall. And so, clearly this was an important social hub for him, and probably somewhere he was doing business and networking as well. So this is actually, I'm including this, maybe this is too, getting too speculative, but this is a copy of Christian's obituary from 1914, or 2 copies. The left side is the Hayward Journal copy, and the right side is the Martinez Gazette. And I just kind of see this as kind of a clue as to where his social interactions were focused. Obviously, Hayward had a lot more to say about him than the San Ramon Valley. So, maybe reading between the lines, but seems like Hayward was kind of where he was hanging his hat most of the time. There's a great excerpt in his obituary that actually ties back to the 1880s period that I'll read because it's kind of fuzzy. Mr. Wiedemann could talk for hours relating reminiscences of the early days in San Francisco and Alameda and Contra Costa counties, when the latter were like a vast wilderness without roads or fences. And it's just kind of cool to think about, his experience in the county and in the San Ramon Valley at that time. Unfortunately, he did not keep a written journal as some of the other early pioneers did, but fun to think about some of the stuff that he would have encountered in his time there. And it mentions that he voted for Abe Lincoln as well as his first vote as an American citizen. So, yeah, pretty funny. All right, so that's kind of what was going on with this generation in the 1880s. That's sort of a snapshot. So we're going to go to 1925 now. Fred on the far left is an adult. He's married and has a son who's the same age as he is here in this photo. So here we've got Fred, obviously now grown up. On the right, we have his wife, Maddie Jorgensen, and Howard Wiedemann in the middle. And this is at the top of Mount Diablo. So 1925, They actually had vehicular access at that time. We have earlier photos of Fred and Maddie taking horseback expeditions with groups up to the top of the mountain, which would have been a heck of a ride. But fortunately, they were able to drive up on this particular day. And Howard had a younger sister, Ann. There was an age difference here, so Howard obviously looks a bit older than he did in the previous photo. But this is Fred and Maddie and Howard and Ann, probably early 1930s, in front of the second home that they lived in San Ramon. And so this is a picture of the ranch in 1925, more or less. We have the original ranch property that Christian established in the 1800s, highlighted in blue for reference. And the red is what Fred and his brother Henry kind of expanded into in the 19-teens and 20s. So obviously a significant amount of growth by those two in that period of time. Christian never really expanded the original ranch property, so he kind of kept it as is, but Fred and Henry, and I think especially Fred, were particularly ambitious about buying up ranch land. There's a funny quote in a Fred interview from, I think, 1950. He's talking about how he would never buy farmland unless it paid for itself, and it stopped paying for itself in like the 19-teens or 20s. And it's kind of funny to hear that coming from the livestock industry today, where ranchers are still talking about how the cattle won't pay for the land. And it's like, well, I guess that hasn't been the case for 100 years now. So pretty interesting. Yeah, exactly. So this photo is a little bit later than 1925, but gives you an idea of what the valley looked like. Obviously, a lot of walnut orchards going in. There was a small Wiedemann walnut orchard here. And so one of our enterprises at that time was walnut production. We would also do custom harvesting for other folks. And then farming, hay production, hay and grain was a big part of it. And livestock still also a big part. And Fred had a bit of a hog or a pig enterprise. And there are a lot of entries in the journals from this time about farming, all kinds of different crops, kale, beets, tomatoes. Hard to tell. I can't tell if those were commercial operations or not, but needless to say, they were doing a bunch of different stuff at this time. Yeah, definitely dry land. Yeah, there was no irrigation for most of this stuff. So, yep, everything dry land, exactly. Oh, and I'll mention too, so when Fred and Maddie first got married, they moved from the Wiedemann house over here to the Watson Ranch, or what we called the Watson Ranch. So that was the first place they lived. That's where Howard, my grandfather, was born. And that's roughly more or less where Canyon Lakes Country Club is today. We'll look at a comparison photo here in a minute. So a little bit later in the 1920s, Fred and Maddie built a second house here on Norris Canyon Road. This is kind of close to the intersection of Bollinger Canyon and Norris. And they would kind of go back and forth after that time. So Ann, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kaplan's, but I believe Ann was born in that house. So Howard would have been born at the Watson, and then Ann at the Norris Canyon house. And they would have spent the summers mostly at the Watson place. All right, so this is the Watson place. Gives you an idea of kind of what the terrain was like out there, a little bit flatter, good farming ground. And this is the comparison just for reference where it is today in San Ramon. It's actually the fifth hole of the Canyon Lakes golf course. It's right on the green, so pretty nice, nice flat spot to putt a golf ball. This is Crow Canyon Road that comes up and around here. So these are kind of the hills up above San Ramon on the east side. And these are some photos from the Watson Ranch in the 20s. So we've got Maddie raising chickens on the top left, and Howard on a horse. We've got Ann on what looks like a bigger horse down there on the left side. And Maddie here doing her best Annie Oakley impression. And so in terms of school, San Ramon Schoolhouse still would have been where the kids were going to class. On the far left, top left, we have Howard on his way to school, 1925. And so this is at the house on Norris Canyon Road, and we're looking down Norris Canyon towards downtown San Ramon. So that's close to the intersection of Bollinger and Norris, basically looking east downtown. So obviously not a lot else going on out there at that time. This is the 1925 class at the San Ramon School. This is Howard in the middle. And Looks pretty similar, honestly, to the classes that Fred and the other Wiedemann kids had in the 1880s at this point.
Question.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
The big grove of trees, that wasn't the eucalyptus trees, was it? I mean,
You know, I don't know. They're big trees. They look like they could be. Yeah. You got me.
they do.
Yeah.
Roxy, they really do look like the eucalyptus trees that would take you into the weed where you were raised.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah,
that's Nora's
And that's where they
Canyon.
were.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, they have that look.
So the bottom right is downtown San Ramon.
Yeah, so that's downtown. We've got Howard here. These would be his classmates from the school. This would be at the San Ramon store. So, whoops. So we're looking south down the San Ramon Valley in this photo. So yeah, downtown San Ramon, basically. Oh yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
Japanese kids in the two photos here?
It's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have names for these either, unfortunately. But certainly could be. Yeah. You think it is, Dad? Uh-huh. Yeah.
Japanese laundry.
Well, they were farming.
Mm-hmm.
They had hot tubs.
They had what?
Hot tubs.
Hot tubs?
Interesting. Yeah, it was definitely a diverse class for sure. Bottom left, the San Ramon School basketball team. Howard is not looking very tough, but he is tall, so he's got that going for him. And so in terms of different enterprises on the ranch, firewood was still a big one. This is Fred, Howard seated in the foreground, and this is a mechanical firewood chopper. Much easier doing it this way than by hand, I'm sure. Hay farming, of course, was also a big part of the operation. Top left is Fred with a gas-powered harvester. This is a crew stacking some hay, probably on the Watson Place. Same crew, taken on the same day on the bottom left there. They're kind of posing, but those were the workers that were working out there, we think. And the bottom right, I'm told that's Howard raising his hat on top of the harvester, and that's an 18 horse team of horses. So pretty amazing. And they would have been running that, I think, into the early 1930s at least. So pretty impressive setup to do that. This is a hay baler, apparently. And I look at this and I honestly don't really know what's going on here. So there are experts here. Don Wood, I would probably defer to you. Don, you probably know more than I do about this photo. But apparently this was a hay press. They're taking loose hay. I believe they're putting it into some sort of a compression mechanism over here. And then I have no idea what the gentleman on the bottom left is doing. So do you know what he's doing?
That was a horsepower that powered that hay press.
Okay.
The horses ran around, went up and pressed hay up and pushed hay up 5 times and put wires around it. The horses had that circle. Every charge.
So every strand. Interesting.
As the charges were squished together,
Mm-hmm.
they went around and they hand tied the fire.
Wow.
So it wasn't every strand.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So every bale they had to manually tie the strands.
Yeah, they
Yep.
put wire around it and tied the wire.
Wow. There you go.
I should show you.
I should see that. So this is a fully loaded hay wagon after the hay press is done, and that's Fred heading out with a full load. You've got to hope that wagon has good brakes on it because that is just a tremendous amount of hay. This is another photo of a fully loaded hay wagon. This is at a delivery point in Hayward. Guessing this is 1920s. We have a motorized truck in the back. But yeah, Fred would have driven this load from the San Ramon Valley to Hayward to deliver the hay, and it probably would have gone to San Francisco. Would have been a common place for it to end up. But pretty impressive amount of hay to be moving around. Okay, here's another one that I'm guessing at best about what these various pieces of equipment do. I believe this is a grain processor. Don, could you? It's a thrasher. All right, so this is a steam thrasher. I knew I could rely on you guys to tell me what these were because I wasn't totally sure. So kind of cool. And this is at the Watson place again. We've got a steam tractor. You can see the smoke coming out, and a water barrel with some horses attached to it next to it. And then to the left, we've got a hay wagon and the thrasher. So this is a close-up here of the steam tractor, and then the thrasher on the bottom left. So the steam tractor would run a belt. It would run the thrasher, and then these guys would throw the grain in sacks and stack it up. So again, just a tremendous amount of grain. We think these guys were kind of messing around in this photo. Those grain bags were very heavy. They probably filled those up with cotton to try to look strong for the photographer. But those things were big. So this is Fred, and we've got Howard here. But very cool setup.
Christian,
Yes.
there's a lot of references in the diaries to the other ranch.
Mm-hmm.
I assume these photos are both different areas?
So most of these, the farming photos especially, that would have been the other ranch. So that would have been on the east side of San Ramon. Basically both ranches were sort of in the hills. There wasn't a lot of flat ground. On the east side, it was more rolling hills like this. So would have been a lot more farming over there. So, yep.
The Doherty Ranch.
The Doherty Ranch. Yep, exactly. Yeah, I'll point it out on the next map we look at, Mark. And so 1920s, changing technologies. These guys are getting the fields ready to plant with horse-drawn setups. That's Fred in the middle and the back. And this is probably late 20s, early 30s. That's Fred standing in front of the tractors doing the same job. So presumably these guys were pretty happy that they had access to something a little bit easier to put together than a horse setup.
That Fred's pickup?
Yeah, it might be. And of course, cattle were a part of the operation. So this is the cattle drive down. This would basically be El Costa Boulevard and Crow Canyon Road, looking south down San Ramon Valley. This is close to where the railroad would have run. So yeah, just a neat photo of the valley at that time. Yeah, that'd be tough.
Kristen, are all these photos?
What?
Did you collect these from all the people in the room?
Mostly just from family. Yeah. Yep.
Different family members?
Yes. Yep.
You have quite a variety.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. We've got, so this is Fred and Howard here, 1928, give or take. So this would have been the ranch in San Ramon, so not the other ranch, but this is up in the San Ramon Hills. This is actually close to where I grew up. So kind of a nice photo of Fred and Howard. So roundups were kind of becoming an increasingly popular spectator event during this period of time. I'm not certain of the date on this photo, but this is in the same corral as the last photo that we looked at. These people are obviously not working. They are dressed way too nicely to get their hands dirty. Yeah, it looks like it could be a Sunday picnic. But again, as we see later, people really come out to watch the roundup. So this could have been an early crew to come and spectate.
And Fred's there in the middle.
Yeah, we've got Fred here seated in the middle of them. And this is close to the Wiedemann house up in Norris Canyon Road. Another photo in that same corral. This is Fred with a group of horses from the 1920s. So Fred had a very good relationship with Harry Rowell, who founded the Hayward Rodeo. It later became the Rowell Ranch Rodeo. And so, among other things, Fred would supply livestock and feed to the rodeo. So I don't really know what these horses were for, but it seems plausible that they might have been heading to the rodeo for Harry Rowell. But nice photo of the old ranch there. And we've got some rodeo photos here. So that's Fred and Harry on the top left there, Fred on the right, Harry on the left. Fred's doing some trick roping here on the top right. He's apparently quite the showman. That's Joe Ferreira on the bottom left, also trying to keep up with the trick roping. And again, this would have been in the corral up in the San Ramon Hills. The bottom right, this is Fred's kind of signature rodeo move. He would get a horse going at full gallop, and lean over and grab a handkerchief off the ground at full speed. It was his favorite thing to do. It wasn't really a rodeo event, but he was widely known for it. So that's him doing it at the Hayward Rodeo. And yeah, he definitely liked to show off on horseback. So kind of fun.
The family's very.
Made sure the cinch was tight.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just kind of a stock photo of the San Ramon Hall. I actually couldn't find any of the family down there. Fred was a founding member of the hall in 1911, and it would have been just a social hub in the San Ramon Valley. We have the early ledger book of the San Ramon Hall Association, and it talks about masquerade balls and live music. Pretty much every 2 or 3 months they'd have a big party. And Fred was, he was kind of a party animal. He apparently was known for dancing until, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, going to sleep for a couple hours and getting up for work the next day. So you apparently could not keep him off the dance floor. And he did a lot of his dancing here. And so here we've got the family, of course, when they had a little free time, they were able to get away. This is Yosemite. It was a favorite spot for them, 1925. On the top right, we've got Fred and his sister Rose and Howard. Rose was one of the girls in that original porch photo. So they would make it up to Yosemite quite a bit. Santa Cruz, another favorite spot. Fred is rocking a very impressive farmer tan on the far left there. So doesn't look like he got out in the sun too much. And we've got Maddie on the right side there, both with Howard. And I was amazed to find these photos, but apparently they went up and went skiing occasionally too. So Fred's looking very alpine here. And we've got Rose, probably Maddie in the middle, his wife, and I'm guessing his other sister, Mary, on the far right there. So very fun. And so, Mark, I basically threw this one in there for you because I'm just curious to know what that is. But this is on the Doherty Ranch. That's Fred driving. I don't know who the photo bomber is, but yeah, it's a neat old motorcycle, though. I don't know. Do you have any idea what that might be?
I bet I can find somebody who knows what it is.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, I'll send it to you. It's a cool photo.
There's a couple in the Carson City Museum, just like that.
Okay. Yeah, very good. This is either 19-teens or 1920s. I'm not sure the exact date on this. So, yeah. Oh. All right. So that kind of brings us to, it covers what was happening in this part of the family in the 1920s in terms of ranching enterprises, family, that sort of thing. So now we're going to skip ahead to 1954. So Howard now is grown up and married and has some kids, and he's running the ranch. And so we'll kind of see what's going on with that. All right, so 1954. So here's Howard. It was really hard to find a family photo of these guys just as a family unit from this period of time. So I don't know. We'll have to go through Roxy and Sandy and Dad and try to dig some up. But this was the best I could find. We got Howard. Got my dad, Jeff, here. There's Sandy in the middle. There's Roxy in the red vest over there. looking very sharp. Exactly. Yeah, he's got the gloves on. He's ready to work. And so, yeah. So this would have been a harvesting crew in the 1950s. Nice family photo. This is another one. It's a little bit earlier than the last one. We've got Howard kneeling with Roxy on the far left there, and Doris, his wife, standing above. Maddie, Fred's wife, is over Doris's shoulder. So Doris was my grandmother. Maddie was my great-grandmother. And then we've got, on the far left, that's George Norris. Lee Norris is below him. And this is Noel Norris there. And then Bill Ferreira is kneeling in the front. And I don't know who the other folks are in this photo. But my dad seemed to think this was kind of who was living in the San Ramon Valley at the time. This was kind of the group in the 40s. So nice photo. And so here's a kind of a picture of the ranch and what it looked like at that time. The footprint hasn't really changed. And Mark, to your question earlier, this is kind of the quote unquote other ranch over here, the Doherty Ranch or the Watson Place. So the footprints kind of stayed the same. I talked to my dad about this a little bit. His sense was the ranch and farming business was kind of on an upward trajectory in the 1920s and 30s, and then it kind of started to taper off and go the other direction in the 40s, 50s, 60s, probably due to various economic conditions and other factors. But scale-wise, it's pretty much about the same at this time. Enterprises are very similar: cattle, hay grain, walnuts. We've got the Wiedemann house up here. At this point, Mary and Rose have been living up there since Christian died in 1914, and they would live there for the rest of their lives. And so they're still kind of holding down the fort there on Norris Canyon Road. There were a couple of houses down at the intersection of Norris and Bollinger. That would have been where Fred and Maddie were living at that period of time. Fred, my great-grandfather, Maddie, my great-grandmother, and then Howard and Doris, and that's where Roxy and my dad and Sandy would have grown up as well. And so here we have the 1952 San Ramon Elementary School class. This is in the San Ramon 3-room schoolhouse. So I believe this was recently constructed at this time. Not in the 2-room schoolhouse anymore. We've got Roxy here on the left, Sandy, and then my dad down here in the front and center. So yeah, starting to look a little bit more modern here. Do you recognize any of those folks, Sandy?
Ernie Thomas on the bottom, Mark Johnson on the left.
Yep.
I bet other people know.
Probably do. Yeah, I don't have names on this one either, unfortunately. But
Marcus Johnson, Michael Schlesinger, Ernie Thomas. And Mike Smith up on top.
okay.
And might be Gilbert Boucher. Yeah.
Okay.
And Johnny Boucher.
Okay.
Yeah, on the top.
There you go.
Do you think there was a school uniform? There's so many checkered shirts.
Could have been a dress code for sure. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Might have been the style of the day. I don't know. Yeah. So this is a photo. I just include this. Well, I include it because it's interesting to see the San Ramon Valley undeveloped. But this was actually taken kind of behind the schoolhouse. And my dad told me a funny story. Apparently, this field was often planted to dryland tomatoes. And so the kids at recess would run out, supposed to go to the playground. They would go out in the tomato field and throw tomatoes at each other and have to go back to class. So the school was modernizing, but the pastimes were still kind of staying the same.
And what are you looking at? Is this west of us?
So this is looking up into the San Ramon Hills. So, you know, the Wiedemann house would be located kind of maybe right around here, behind that ridge. Norris Canyon Road would run.
Eucalyptus grove.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of Norris Canyon Road over here. It would have run up that way. So this is taken from roughly where Bevmo is in San Ramon now, to give you an idea. So.
Okay, one memory.
Uh-huh.
So also, hay was in there. Hay was there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And we could make trails through the hay, which we did during recess. And it was a lot of
This field was a source of entertainment for you guys. Yeah. All right, well. So speaking of hay, still doing some harvesting at this time. Certainly hay and grain were a big part of the business. Didn't have a lot of farming photos, actually. This is that same photo that we saw at the beginning of this part of the presentation. That's Howard, arms folded against the tractor on the far left. Making hay bales here, taking loose hay and putting it into the baler. And that's the kids down there on the bottom left, my dad and Roxy and Sandy with the harvester in the background. I think Roxy's holding a cow skull or something charming like that. And this is the only walnut harvester photo I could find. Walnuts were a big part of the business, both harvesting our own walnuts and other people's. This is the only one I could find. That's Howard. He's got the shaker on the tractor, and he's shaking some walnuts. And of course, livestock's still a big part of the business. So on the far left, that's looking down Crow Canyon Road. It's actually similar to the location we saw the other photo with the cattle drive. Al Costa would be kind of going this direction. And so that's, basically looking right down to downtown San Ramon there on the left. This might have been over on Norris Canyon Road. And this is a nice photo. These were all taken on the same day. So we've got Fred here. He's still around and working, obviously. Howard is here in the middle. Kind of hard to see him. No, Howard's right here. Yeah, Howard's below. Yeah, Norma Anderson right there. Thank you. I didn't want to forget that one. And we have Ann on the left, Howard's sister. So yeah, that was the gathering crew that day. Kind of fun.
So that's Grove Canyon Road right there?
That's Crow Canyon. That's coming down from kind of Canyon Lakes, coming from Blackhawk.
Oh, okay. So are those the hills back there then?
Yeah, that'd be looking, you'd be going kind of up over towards Oakland in that direction. Exactly. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So, yeah, a lot of walnut orchards, obviously, at this time, but still.
That building on the railroad?
Uh-huh.
The old barn.
Yeah, barns.
Mm-hmm.
The railroad.
Yeah, I think it would have been, was it a railroad warehouse?
Yeah. There's two of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it would have been a railroad warehouse. Yep.
And maybe Dawn knows, where was the pear orchard?
Right below it there.
Right
down the other side of that barn.
That's walnuts.
Yeah, and on the right side was.
That's all walnuts. That's the warehouse that burnt down
Yeah, I
that
know.
night.
Pear Orchard borders North Canyon.
Did it?
Yeah, right.
Was it on the south side of Norris Canyon?
Yes.
Where the Toyota
Okay.
place is.
Okay. I got you. Okay. So roundups were becoming a big thing during this period of time. They were kind of fun spectator events in the 20s and 30s, and in the 40s, 50s, 60s. I think we have records of, 200, 300, 400 people in attendance at some of these things. So pretty amazing. And you can see the cars all lined up here. This is looking down into the corral up in the San Ramon Hills. This would have been close to where the Wiedemann house was originally. And you can just see all the people lined up around the edge of the corral watching the action. Kind of grainy photos, but another shot of a roundup around this period of time. People would just line the fences and spectate. And a few more photos. That's Fred on the bottom left, still roping. And this would have been, I believe that photo's in the 1950s. So he's getting up there. The top left is Fred in the middle, my great-grandfather, and then Howard, my grandfather, and Ann, my great-aunt, on either side of him. And this is Howard branding on the bottom right. I believe the color on that photo is accurate. If I'm not mistaken, he would actually wear blue cowboy hats. Is that right? Am I getting that right? Okay, I thought so. I thought it's an interesting look. Yeah, I don't know. Might have been custom. The photo of my dad around this period of time, and this is actually the house that I grew up in, although it was remodeled pretty significantly. Save the story on that house for another time, but there's some interesting potential history there as well. But that's a pretty old house that was on the property. And no saddle.
What was the horse's name?
Billy, there you go.
Wow, so we could put it on ourselves.
Seems like a pretty good policy. And of course, after the roundups, we would have everybody over for a big barbecue. So the barbecues would have been at the Wiedemann house in the yard in front of the house. Mary and Rose still would have been living in the house at that time. So those same two girls from 1888, they never married. They lived in that house their whole lives. And so they were, sort of hostesses for the party. But everybody would come over after the roundup. They would eat, they would hang out, and it looked like a lot of fun. So we've got Howard and Doris, my grandparents right there, Fred on the left, and this is Ann on the right, and Howard on the bottom left there with the goofy grin. And these look like a lot of fun. A little side note on Mary and Rose, just to have a couple of pictures of them, because they lived in the house for so long. They would apparently ride this buggy into town well into, I believe, the 1940s, if I'm not mistaken. Is that your guys' recollection as well?
45, I think.
Until 45, yeah. Yeah, so they were riding that down Norris Canyon Road into San Ramon until 1945, which is pretty amazing. Apparently didn't have a lot of creature comforts at the house there for a long time either. I think, did they have outdoor plumbing until pretty late in the day as well? So they were, yeah, I mean, they grew up in the house and didn't need much to get by, so. Yeah, there was a height difference between the two. I mean, clearly there was a tall gene in the family, I'll put it that way. Yeah, I don't know what the height difference was, but it was not insignificant, clearly. And I don't know who the woman is on the left side in this photo. We think maybe it was a visiting relative. And so this carriage is in the barn at the Matthews property on Norris Canyon Road. Descendants of Ann Wiedemann. And bottom left is just a photo of some of the chickens that Mary and Rose kept. They were prolific poultry producers for quite a long time. This is a terrible photo, but I just wanted to include it because it sounded like fun. Apparently, Howard dug, was it the first pool in the valley? So the first swimming pool in San Ramon Valley,
Yeah, I think so.
dug it with a backhoe. Looks like he kind of cemented it himself. And those are the kids. I believe that's my dad and his sisters on the far side of the pool and another friend. And apparently it was a huge hit. Kids would come over after school. You'd walk through the walnut orchards and across the fields and have a pool party. So.
They let school out one day a year, come across the field.
Oh, really? Okay, they let school out one day a year for a pool party. So that would have been fun.
It's still there, they built a house over top of it.
I'd heard that. Yeah, I'd heard that. Yeah. And so there was also still some activity in the San Ramon Hall at this time. Howard, I was surprised to learn this, was an actor in some of the local plays.
I actually did props for Howard in the Solid Gold Cadillac and Bell Book and Candle.
Wow. There you go. There you go. Yeah, he did a bunch of performances. It was pretty amazing. So you've got a cast photo there with Howard on the right. Yeah, that's Livermore there in the middle. And looked like a lot of fun. Sounded very informal. I mean, it was just a bunch of people from the neighborhood who would put these productions on, as far as I understood. And sounded.
It was a kind of a repertory group, if you could call it that.
Mm-hmm.
People who did these.
Yep.
Quite a
To do in
production.
high school.
Yeah. Looked like a lot of fun. I came across some landscape photos. I just thought I'd share a couple. It's just kind of fun to see the valley undeveloped. This is from the hills looking down, of course, towards Mount Diablo. Small herd of Wiedemann cattle down there on the bottom left, and nothing but walnut orchards out there. This is probably 1950s. I don't have a date on it. This is an aerial, I'm guessing again, 1940s, 1950s of downtown San Ramon. So we had the San Ramon Hall in the middle left, the schoolhouse in the middle, and the San Ramon store on the bottom left. So that's kind of what it looked like really for quite a long time. This is Norris Canyon Road in this direction. Bollinger Canyon didn't go through yet, but eventually when it would cut right through that barn on the left side there. And so this was sort of the Wiedemann walnut orchard in this area, extending to that side of the picture. These are the houses where Fred and Maddie were living, as well as where my dad and his sisters grew up with Howard and Doris around those eucalyptus trees there. And the Norris Ditch, you can see extending. Yep, exactly, at an angle up there. So this is looking towards downtown San Ramon. And another just kind of nice photo from downtown looking up. This is towards the west side, San Ramon Hills. I don't know who this gentleman is. The photo was captioned as Herman. So that's all I've got on this one. But nice photo of the valley at that time.
Possibly Herman Sandcool.
Okay, good to know. Maybe Herman Sandcool.
Sandcools are here.
Indeed, yeah. Okay, so that's sort of that era, 1954. So we're going to jump ahead now to when this guy is grown up and has a couple of kids. And again, I couldn't find any good family photos. We didn't take a lot apparently in the early 80s, but here we are. This is my dad, my mom, and my brother and I. So, yep. So this is the house that I grew up in. It was a remodel of a much older house that was on the property. This is near the Wiedemann house in San Ramon. So we grew up here. Roxy and her husband and my cousin Maddie grew up in the original Wiedemann house. And then Sandy and her husband and my cousins Jay and Corey were in another house up the hill. So we kind of had a little cluster out there, sort of a commune, we sometimes referred to it. And I mean, it was the middle of nowhere. There was a half-mile dirt road to get out there. So it was pretty remote upbringing. Another photo from down below. This is the house I grew up in with some horses there in the 80s. And another nice family photo. Of course, we've got my family on the right, Sandy and John and Jay and Corey in the middle there, and then Roxy and Randy and Maddie on the far left side. This would have been Easter, probably 1986. And this would have been at the Wiedemann house in up Norris Canyon Road there. So the ranch at this time has obviously gone through some changes. Clearly in the 80s, a lot of development activity happening in the San Ramon Valley. It doesn't really look anything like it did in kind of the last snapshot we looked at. So the entire Doherty Watson property at this point has been sold and developed, and a portion of the property along Norris Canyon Road. So this would have been the property that was commonly referred to as the Perkins Place in the journals that Mark, you're posting on Facebook. So those were sold for a variety of reasons: estate planning, property taxes, a lot of the reasons that a lot of ranchers in the area at that time were forced to downsize and sell. We still had cattle acreage in the hills above San Ramon. Also in the early 80s, the viability of the farming enterprises started to go downhill. My dad tells me that when he took over the operation, when his father died in 1982, they looked at the books. The farming was just not making it anymore, and so made the hard decision to eliminate that enterprise at that time. So really just exclusively a livestock business at this point, and also still selling firewood, as a matter of fact. This is I'm not sure which class this is, but I am the abnormally tall kid in the back row right there. So no surprise there. This is Twin Creeks Elementary. Actually, kind of a fun fact, I didn't know this when I went to school here, but this was located right in the middle of the Perkins Place. So my great-grandfather would have planted a walnut orchard right in the location where this school was. So I had no idea when I was going to school there, but looking at old maps, it was kind of a fun realization. And so again, farming kind of not really happening anymore at this point. We've got an old harvester looking a little worse for the wear on the bottom left there. We're buying hay at this point. So on the top left, that's my dad and I feeding hay near the house that I grew up in. It's just cheaper and more economic to buy it at that point. We were still selling firewood, of course, which had been a tradition for a long time. And we were still putting some of the old equipment to use. That's my dad on a Caterpillar tractor on the bottom right, pulling a road grader that I'm guessing is at least 100 years old and still totally effective at grading roads.
That phone number really is 820 Wood?
It really is. Yeah, it really is.
9663.
I think we still might have that one, actually. Yeah. Yep. Easy to remember. And so, yeah, of course, we were still doing cows at this time. My parents on the top left there. My brother and I would saddle up occasionally. And bottom left photo is in the old corral. This is near the Wiedemann house up in Norris Canyon Road, right where I grew up. That's my dad applying some fly spray to some cows. And we've got a gathering on the bottom right. This is actually just below the corrals on the left side. Very big group of cows coming in the evening. Kind of a nice photo. And of course, brandings were still happening. The turnouts were not quite as good as they were in the 1950s and 60s. You can tell what year it is by the sweater that this roper is wearing. That's just the most 80s thing I could imagine to rope cows in. So pretty impressive. And we've got a class from Twin Creeks Elementary School over here. They would often come to these brandings.
And
George.
fella down here, raise your hand, George.
We got George Stegman, I believe, right there. Yep.
Roger Mast on the right.
Yep.
Benders, and I think Art Anderson.
That's right. Yep. Art Anderson on the left. Exactly.
Roger Mast,
Who's this gentleman here?
Jim Fagundes.
Jim Fagundes.
Jeff's dad.
Okay.
And you could have Healy there in the middle on the bottom right.
Yeah.
You're holding the.
Oh, this one here? I think that's you,
In
Mom.
blue. No, Haley.
You sure?
Yep.
I don't think so.
No,
Me.
that's Haley.
Is it?
That's Haley.
I think it's me, I'm holding the,
This one here? Okay.
Really?
I thought because you were so tall it was you, but I could, yeah, that's right.
Talk about your brand. Oldest in California.
So, interesting story on the brand thing. So, it's not the oldest in California, period. That would belong to probably Spanish land grant brands and those sorts of things. The distinction that we had on one of our cattle brands, it's a little bit misleading. We had an actual physical branding iron that was used continuously every year for over 100 years. So that was the oldest continuously used brand in California. But in terms of actual age of registered brands, definitely not. Yeah, it was registered in 1856. And I mean, there are many, many, many brands that are older than that. So it's a PS. PS. Christian, my great-great-grandfather, bought a herd of cows and a registered brand from a gentleman named George Paris, and he had registered PS for his name. So that's where that came from. So yeah, but these, old branding photos kind of look similar to the older ones, kind of still doing it the same way. We got some other old ranchers here. So I didn't have a lot of photos with Howard because I didn't have a lot of overlap with him. He passed away when I was 1 year old. And so there I've got a photo of him holding me on the horse. And another nice one here, some of the local cattlemen. This is Bud Nielsen on the left, Russ Anderson, and this is Howard here. This might be a Cronin. Mac Osborne? Okay, I was way off. There we go. All right, yeah. Bottom left, we've got my dad again hanging out with Bud Nielsen and Russ Fields. And then again, I don't know the gentleman on the left. You guys have any idea who that is? Perry Davila. Okay, there we go. So that's kind of the rancher crew from the 80s. Worth mentioning that both my dad and Howard were awarded the Cattleman of the Year award by the local cattlemen's organization in the 1980s. So clearly contributors to the local livestock community at that time. Okay, I'm going to try to make this work. I don't know if it's going to or not, but we're going to find out. I've got a short video of a roundup from the 80s that's kind of fun. Let's see if I can make this go. Right.
Cattle roundup time on the Wiedemann Ranch. It looks like a page out of the past. But this is today, barely 3 miles from Highway 680 in the San Ramon Valley. And back here in the hills, tradition lives.
Basically, it hasn't changed any as long as I can remember. I think even back as far as the turn of the century, Jeff's grandfather probably done exactly the same thing as they're doing here today. A wood fire, rope the calves, a little get-together to get the job done. Maybe next week they go to the neighboring ranch and do it.
Nobody is getting paid. It's just neighbor helping neighbor, applying the 3 R's they learned from their parents: rigging, riding, and roping. The tools of the trade remain the same: horse, saddle, rope, and spurs. One thing has changed. A lot of the wranglers are women. Sometimes they take their lumps. Molly Cronin got dumped and stepped on by her feisty 4-year-old horse.
I'm fine. I think we'll see tomorrow morning when we get out of bed.
She was back in the saddle in a matter of minutes, proving, as Jeff Wiedemann says, that cowboys and cowgirls are special.
Yeah, they're rugged individuals, I think, is probably the primary distinction between them and the average guy in the street.
A 4th grade class from Twin Creek School came to see some real live California history. First lesson: not everybody is cut out to be a cowboy.
I don't like it. I don't want to be a cowgirl because I don't like blood.
But blood and branding go with the territory. I'm John Foreman, News on 4.
Pretty funny. All right. So, and then of course we talked about this earlier, but a big characteristic of this period of time is obviously the turnover of land for development in the San Ramon Valley, and that was a huge part of our family's story at that period of time. And so, yeah, just worth mentioning that this was obviously the cause of a lot of change for us and a lot of other producers in the area. So, common story, and yeah, I think the freeway coming through in the 1960s kind of got the ball rolling, and it really seemed to accelerate in the 80s. So, nice photo of my parents down there on the bottom left, though. And so when we weren't working, we were doing other fun stuff. This is the Danville Parade, probably 1986. We've got, I think you guys were the grand marshals in the parade for this one, the whole family. So we've got my dad, my mom, and I think that might be my brother and I in the back, Sandy and John, and the cousins up there on the top of the carriage. So this is Christine and Haley Kaplan here, daughters of Ann Wiedemann. And this is that same carriage that we saw the photo of earlier that was restored so nicely. So that was Mary and Rose's carriage. Do you guys know the date on that carriage, how old it was? Is it 1800s construction, or?
Yeah, it was early, and then Mary and Rose drove it down to my mother's house on North Canyon, and she drove them to town. So they might have driven that buggy longer than you were talking about.
Yeah, okay, good to know.
But they didn't go all the way to town.
Good to know, good to know.
But that was the 4th of July.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's looking good. It's looking nice. And my mom on the bottom, her convertible bug representing, so. Yeah, Volkswagen, that's right. There you go. And another fun family social tradition that kind of started in the 1980s. This was one of my favorite memories as a kid. The roundup attendance was definitely declining at this time, but what sort of replaced it in some ways was Kite Day. So we would invite, it seemed like everybody who wanted to come up on the hills and fly a kite. And we had huge turnouts, and it was really a lot of fun. So people would come up, they would fly kites in the hills during the day, and then we would do a big potluck barbecue at the old Wiedemann house afterwards. So very similar format, I guess, to a branding, just a little bit different activity. So
Roxy and Randy started it.
Cool. What year did you guys start it? Do you remember?
Yeah, I'm not sure. If I saw, is this Nancy or me?
I'm not sure. That might be my mom. I'm not sure.
Yeah, could have been the 80s.
Yeah, 80s. Yeah.
It went on we did it like over 40 times.
Yeah. Well, you carried the torch nicely in Tasahara for a long time. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So anyway, this is always a lot of fun. So that kind of covers the 80s. And that's sort of the end of the presentation. I don't really have anything else to cover. So any questions? Otherwise, thanks for listening.